The plume emanating from the chemical disaster in Ohio continues to spread, and we have new answers and new questions for some of the people in charge of this, including Governor DeWine from the state of Ohio. So reporters are asking him, "You're saying everything's pretty much under control, right? Well, would you go home, Governor?" And he's going to answer that question. We're going to see what he says. But there is new information about this plume, because the plume is moseying around through America like the Chinese balloon. People don't know what to do about it, and it's just floating overhead. And so we have the Ohio EPA spokesperson who's going to give us some details on this. And if you think, hey, it's just Ohio, I live in one of the other 49 states, or Canada, or Canada, according to Karine, it is something that might be impacting you, okay? Even if you are not in the plume zone, you're also talking about the rivers and the farms and all sorts of just compounding, exacerbating effects. So it could be a big problem. And so we're going to go back and take a look at what this update provides to us from Reuters. This was posted on February 15th, and this is the latest. They say Ohio is cleaning up the toxic train derailment, but the plume moves downstream. Doesn't sound good. Cleanup is moving quickly. We are going to listen to Governor Mike DeWine. He was talking about this on Tuesday. He said that there are a lot of efforts being conducted and underway. However, we're still concerned about some things. Of course, we know what happened, the backstory here. Governor said the pollution did not pose a serious threat. He and several other Ohio health environmental officials cautioned at an afternoon press conference, which we're going to listen to, that residents using private water wells near the derailment should only use bottled water, right? So if you have a well that you've dug and you're using the groundwater, consider bottled water. Reporters pressed DeWine and other officials about some of the residents' complaints about headaches and concern that maybe the government and the railroad were not telling them the entire truth. You're kidding me. They wouldn't be dishonest. I mean, they're probably as reputable as the CDC, right? The EPA, surely. One of the chemicals on the train, vinyl chloride, we talked all about it. It combusts at 8 or 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Bruce Vanderhorst, the director of the Department of Health, said that the compound spilled can cause headaches, but that the measured facts show air sampling is not reporting any danger. Cities that could possibly be in the plume's path can turn off their drinking water intakes as it floats by. Okay, so as this chemical cloud floats overhead, you sort of shelter in place, right? Turn off your water. Officials said the volume of the river diluted the plume, and the plume did not pose a serious threat. Another aerial image of what is going on there. Now, union officials said they've been warning about an accident, and everybody else is pointing fingers now. Everybody probably needs more money and, of course, more government intervention to solve this, which I think is, of course, a joke. But that was the story. Now, as the plume moves downstream, we listened to what the Ohio EPA coordinator had to say for us at the press briefing. Here she is.
We know that there is a plume moving down the Ohio River, so all of our neighboring states, state departments, and Arsenco are in constant communication about the location of the plume. We think it's on its way around Huntsville or Huntington, West Virginia now, and so all of those water systems are in constant communication on when it may be at their intake, and they're either shutting down and or using the treatment available that they have on site. So
okay,
we
so
know that there is.
It sounds like this cloud of death is floating over the countryside, and there are water intake facilities. We're not talking about your well, although your well might be something that is impacted, as we read in the article. But we're talking about citywide sort of water processing plants. They take all this water in, and it sits in certain ports, sort of, right? Canals and rivers and all this stuff, all the waterways. And so you have this area where they're going to just shut it down as the plume moves overhead, so that the water doesn't get contaminated, or they'll treat it there with what they have there. And so it's kind of like they're on high alert. If the wind changes and it goes over this direction, then they'll shut down that water treatment center or this water treatment center. And so you can see it's kind of a little bit of a cat and mouse game. We're watching where this cloud of death continues to float. And so there are people on Twitter and elsewhere taking a look and sort of estimating what some of this trajectory might look like. You see here, cities within 200 miles of East Palestine. We have Detroit, pretty big city. Columbus, Ohio. We've got several places in Canada, like Hamilton and Mississauga in Canada. Shout out to our Canada friends. I say that lovingly. Our dumb idiot press secretary called you guys that yesterday on some show. Anyways, so Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Kitchener. We've got Beach Koki. We're just going to fast forward through the Canada names. London, Windsor. We've got Pittsburgh, Toledo, Buffalo, Akron, Oakville, and Burlington in Canada, all within 200 miles of East Palestine. So pretty interesting that all of them might be impacted. This was something I found on Twitter. Somebody was doing a particle cross-section analysis, and they're identifying what looks like to be the particulates in the air meandering over sort of the northeast coast of America. Another image here was of some of the other cities in that nearby radius. We see the Great Lakes. We've got Pennsylvania, Marietta, all sorts of big areas right nearby. We have this image, which shows us the Ohio River, which forms the juncture of a number of different states. You know, look, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 states there, right there, just connected off that one little blue line. And then you've got tributaries and everything else that flows into. So it is pretty dang big, and it's not looking great. The Ohio River Basin will then flow into the other areas of the country, other regions of the country. So if it goes back into the Mississippi takes it up to the upper Mississippi River Basin, or down into the lower Mississippi River Basin. And how it's all flowing, I don't know, but it's not good, because if the plume is entering the waterways in multiple areas, it becomes problematic. So a lot of people are asking questions. Now, I certainly don't want to contribute to any unnecessary panic or unnecessary concern here, but we do have questions about our government, especially when they start trotting out this guy, the old lab coat bow tie guy. Remember this guy? We already saw this guy back during COVID. His name was Dr. Anthony Fauci, and he came out with his multiple face masks and his face shields, and he came out with his stupid lab coat, and he told us all that everything was going to be fine if we just did this stupid thing and that stupid thing. Turns out none of it really worked out that well for us, in my humble opinion. Follow the CDC guidelines. Now, it's a concern, right? I think that when you see that, when they trot out the person, he might as well have brought out his EPA credentials. I'm an official EPA guy, I'm a scientist. I am a scientist, He should have brought out his credentials, his PhD, and his dissertation. But whenever they drag somebody out like that, you start to ask yourselves, is this just a show for the cameras now, or what's going on here? We have questions about exactly the level of trustworthiness that is due to the people who are in charge. So we'll go over to Governor DeWine. He's going to explain a little bit about what happened here. He talks about the release, and this is what it sounds like. This was a clip from Newsmax.
So the release occurred, as I recall, about 4:15, 4:20.
Audio in this press conference is pretty trash, by the way.
We, we're monitoring the air outside that area, and the air continued to be good. Fast forward to the time when we opened it back up a couple of days later. We had sent in members of the Ohio National Guard and had their protective suits on to measure the air. And no one went back within that area or was allowed back in that area until they could come back and tell us that the monitoring was consistently good. In fact, the monitoring showed that the air was basically what it was prior to the actual train crash, what we would have expected it to be. At
so
that
basically
time.
Nothing.
People were then let back in. Our environmental teams remain in East Palestine, where they're working directly with the railroad and others to ensure that the site is thoroughly cleaned up with no shortcuts. This morning, I called Alan Shaw, CEO of Norfolk Southern. He and I have had contact numerous times since the crash. I discussed with him many of the concerns that we're hearing from residents of East Palestine. I asked him directly if he would personally guarantee that the railroad would stay there until absolutely everything was cleaned up. He gave me his word and his commitment that the railroad would do that. They would not leave until that was done.
Wow, that's great. So the CEO of one of the biggest chemical catastrophes promised the governor, oh yeah, we're going to clean it up. Don't worry about it. And I guess that's good. So the CEO is going to take care of it. He's taking his word for it. Hopefully he delivers. But we have questions about this. A lot of questions about what caused the accident and about the decision to really start this release. Were there any alternatives? Was anybody consulted? Did the federal government know about this? Nobody certainly voted on this. Was this a private corporation exercising their pressure on really, this sort of intercommingled private government entity that exists in these situations. We were talking about this on a locals members live stream where, different states, like utility companies are sort of this weird pseudo government private utility. They're not really private companies. They're not really government entities. They're kind of this weird mixture of the two. And big infrastructure, projects like this are typically, in that bucket. So is this a situation where they were sort of leaning on the government and the government was okay with some of these decisions? Nobody wanted this to get bad. And so everybody just sort of said, okay, let's just go ahead and get rid of this thing because there's nothing else that we can do. I don't know. We'll have to see. But turns out the question goes over to Governor DeWine. Did you consult with anybody? And turns out he did. Apparently, he talked to the DOD, the Department of Defense.
All right, we'll go to the online questions.
Hi. Hi, yeah, this is Matthew Cunningham Cook with The Lever. Just wondering who besides Norfolk Southern was consulted on in this decision to do controlled release? Was there independent information collected by either the state of Ohio or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that allowed you to make a decision about the controlled release independent of what was being provided to you by Norfolk Southern?
Yeah.
Great question. Because we ask ourselves, did Norfolk Southern, the railway company, did they have the citizenry's best interest at heart? Or did they have their interests at heart? Did they want to cover this up as quickly as possible? Or were they being open and honest and transparent about how to handle this? Reporter wants to know if there was anybody independent who may have weighed in on this outside of just a government, of a private pseudo-government entity that, of course, is very conflicted on this entire story.
Consulted, as I indicated, we consulted. The Ohio National Guard was consulting directly with the Defense Department. The modeling was very important. We wanted to know exactly what the ramifications of the modeling would be, or of the explosion would be. So yes, we reached out to every expert that we could find.
Reached out to everybody, consulted with the DOD. They did a bunch of modeling, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat, people saying, it could have exploded. An explosion would have taken that contained chemical that was not being released in a controlled environment and burned at the scene and blown it all over the whole country, or something like that. And I think that might be a valid point. But the question, right, the question is not necessarily about the decision. It's about how the decision was reached. Was this just Norfolk, the railroad company, just calling and saying, we got to do this like right now because of X, Y, and Z? Because you have situations like that where you say, well, maybe there's something being covered up, right? It's a conflict of interest. If in any other environment, if you're the person who does the bad thing, right, typically you have somebody who kind of comes in and oversees the remediation, right? If you get charged with a crime, for example, the courts don't say, well, you're on your own, go figure it out. Let me know if you need anything to penalize you more appropriately, right? The courts oversee that. Somebody oversees these decisions when an accident happens. There's some sort of oversight, right? That's what the government tells us why they're so important, is because they're overseeing everything so accidents like this don't happen. They've already got a billion different regulations. And so they need more of them. They need more unions. They need more money to make sure this crap doesn't happen. How much more do they need? I don't know. But apparently they need more because this accident happened and we're seeing more and more accidents happen. I don't think it's a money problem. I don't think it's a technology problem. I don't think it's a private sector capitalism problem. I think it's a gigantic bureaucracy, mismanagement, government incompetence problem. But they keep pretending like they know what they're doing and that they're acting with all of our interests in mind. So he explains a little bit more about the smoke plume as it makes its way across the East Coast. Let's listen.
Question is from Dan DeRoos, WOIO in Cleveland.
Good afternoon, Governor. Thanks for taking the time for an update. The one thing that hasn't been discussed today is the giant column of doomsday-looking smoke that went up after the quote-unquote controlled release and burn. Are we just supposed to believe that that just disappeared, that went up into the atmosphere and just went away? That had to have come down somewhere. There has to be a blanket of whether it's soot or chemical, whether it was the wind sort of shifted that evening, so it kind of went instead of just to the south east, it kind of started to go straight east and then a little to the north. I mean, this has got to be on the ground somewhere. And if we're talking livestock, if we're talking pets, if we're talking kids out playing, there's no concern more than a mile out, 10 miles out, 20 miles out, 30 miles out. What happened to that smoke, and who can give those answers?
Let me see who can, if we've got someone who can answer that.
Ask the bow tie guy.
I don't think there's anyone here who's volunteering. So
no, they don't have any answers on that.
What we're trying to.
Okay, it's a great question. The question was, where's all that plume going? What's it going to do? Is it going to rise up high into the sky and dissipate, or is it going to come back down, right? Is this stuff heavier than air, lighter than air? Is it going to, be turbulent? Where is it going to end up? Because we're seeing images like this one taken from the sky, and it looks like it's kind of a big problem, right? That's going to come down somewhere. This reporter is saying, is it going to land on land? Is this going to, fall into the ocean? What are you guys doing about this? You guys are the scientists. You guys know what these chemicals do. What are the answers? And he basically says, we don't have many answers for you on that. He actually literally looks around. Bow tie guy doesn't have anything for him. And let's see what he says. Anybody want to take this?
Let me see who can, if we've got someone who can answer that.
Nope.
I don't think there's anyone here who's volunteering. So.
Nope.
And look, what we're trying to do is be very, very careful, follow what the science is. I don't know what the science is in regard to that. But we'll try to get you an answer. If we can't get it today, we'll try to get you an answer later.
No answers on that. No answers where that's going. All right.
I will say the only thing I can say for sure is that we were monitoring the air. This was a relatively small area that we had cordoned off and told people that they need to leave. We were monitoring the air in real time when that went up in the area right outside there, and that quality of air remained good the entire time. We later, the next day, went in, of course, to within that area, the red area and the yellow area, and started measuring it, and it was good. But at the moment when it went up, we were still getting readings. My understanding is they're still getting readings right outside that area that indicated that it was good. But I cannot answer your question. What happens when that goes up?
All right, that's an interesting thing. So, a lot of unknowns, and people are asking themselves, well, is it safe to go home? Is it safe to drink the water? Are my animals going to die? We've seen a lot of photographs, and we talked about this 2 days ago, of videos from local reporters saying fish are dropping dead and people's chickens are dropping dead. And it's not a good situation. People's pets feel sick. People have headaches and nausea and all sorts of stuff. And our government, they tell us, everything is just basically fine, except it's kind of not that fine, right? Here is his credit. He's being honest with us, and I appreciate that. Governor DeWine gets asked, hey, Governor, that smoke plume that's floating around the whole world, is that a problem? Or would you go back home to your house if you were in that area?
And also, Governor, if you were to live in the area, would you feel comfortable moving back into your home?
Let me take the first part. Look, I think that I would be drinking the bottled water.
Okay, good.
And I would be continuing to find out what the tests were showing as far as the air. I would be alert and concerned, but I think I would probably be back in my house.
So he would go home. He would go home, but he wouldn't drink the water. And he would still test the air and be vigilant. But make sure you get your water bottles stored up over there. But certainly he'd go home. Fortunately, he doesn't have to go back there. He has a mansion somewhere else, like these people always do. But, everybody else is probably okay. Just don't take a shower or shower in bottled water or something. And good luck with your everything else, I guess, that needs water, like your animals and livestock and crops and all of that stuff. Whatever you've got out there, good luck. Now, you saw a bow-tied guy was out there at the beginning, and we want to hear what he has to say about that. He's even got a pen in his front pocket. Now, I don't know if there's a pocket protector in there or not, but he's got 2 fully delineated credentials there. He's got a bow tie, and I have got nothing against bow ties, by the way. I'm not really even perturbed by the bow tie. It's the bow tie with the white lab coat, with the pen, with the glasses, with the science doctor labels on there. The guy's wearing a costume, okay? He's wearing a costume for us, for his press conference to make him look official. And this is what he says.
I think that was a very good answer. Truly, I think the governor really summarized the important points.
All right, genius there. So basically, he doesn't add anything. Just do whatever the governor says. All right, so I don't know if he does have much else to contribute. I didn't listen to the rest of his stuff because you got to be careful with these people. All right, people who show up with all the credentials and if they look exactly like something that you'd expect them to look like, they might be incompetent, right? Competent people generally don't have to wear a costume. They're just competent and they just do the thing because they know the competence doesn't necessarily relate to the image. Right. And if you, and I'm not belittling any bow tie people or people who like to dress up and look nice, but that is a costume. Okay. So we also have another story here from the governor. Questions came to Ohio. Have you heard anything from the White House? Has old Pete Buttigieg gotten off paternity leave yet? Is he back in the office taking calls? Obviously, this is a pretty big story here, Governor. Are you hearing from the White House in any way, shape, and form?
Concerns. I get it. I understand their concerns, but all we can do is give the best information.
So, questions about the federal government. Senator Vance pushed back a little bit on that on this show, and then you said, no, we've had a great response from the Biden administration to this problem. He's asking, where's Pete Buttigieg? Do you wonder why he hasn't been there, looked at what's going on? Is he looking at the testing that's going on?
He's running for president.
Is he looking at the damage to that one car? Why did this happen? Why so many derailments lately? Is he involved to the extent that he should be in this, Governor?
Well, look, I've not seen him at all. I did get a call from the president. The president said, I'll send you whatever you need.
Pete didn't
I said,
call?
look, Mr. President, your EPA has been in here from the word go. They've been working with the Ohio EPA. They've been working very closely.
Huh?
When we did the modeling, when that plume was going to go up, we knew it was going to go up. The modeling was really done to a great extent by the U.S. military. Told us exactly, where they thought the danger zones were. We went back in there based on that information for the 3rd time and asked people to leave who were in that particular area. We continue to monitor outside that area. And frankly, as those monitors continue to show, that air outside that particular area when this occurred was in fact safe. So look, we are concerned. We're not going to leave. We're going to continue to do everything that we can every single day, 24/7, because look, this could be my family in there. It could be some loved one in there. These are people we care about. They're our citizens, and we're going to do everything we can to protect them.
We hope so. We hope so. Now, there was a response from Pete Buttigieg. He did actually post about this on Twitter. This was 2 days ago, and here's what he said. February 13th, 6:24 p.m. He writes, I continue to be concerned about the impacts of the February 3rd train derailment near East Palestine, Ohio, and the effects on families in the 10 days since their lives were upended through no fault of their own. True. It's important that families have access to useful and accurate information, he writes. The U.S. Department of Transportation has been supporting, right? You notice this language is very fun. Has been, like he's been working this whole time. And he said that here too. I continue to be concerned. So he's starting in the middle of the conversation. It's very, very neat way to communicate. It's like he just jumps right into the conversation, hoping you don't notice that he's been missing for a while. USDOT has been supporting the investigation led by the NTSB. Our Federal Rail Administration and pipelines and hazardous materials teams were on site within hours of the initial incident and continue to be actively engaged. He says we will look to these investigation results and based on them, use all relevant authorities to ensure accountability and to continue to support safety. He says, in the meantime, our federal partners at the EPA are on site and monitoring indoor and outdoor air quality to test for VOCs and other chemicals of concern. He says the EPA has screened 291 homes and no detections were identified, which is good news, and 181 homes to remain. To request screening, please call the number on your screen or visit more information at the website response.epa.gov. All right, so they're doing some work, and we're going to see what their results reveal for us. And hopefully it is something that is quick and clean and everybody is healthy and well. We have J.D. Vance, who is a newly elected senator from the great state of Ohio, and he is chiming in here today. He was on Fox Business and talking about the groundwater because even though a lot of this might be gone, let's say a month from now, right? The Plume may be gone. We'll be talking about, I don't know, another Russian hack or Donald Trump's spy balloons or something. And it will come back again and we'll ask ourselves, what about the groundwater? Is it all now going to show up in our food? Are the cows going to be drinking the water and it's going to end up in your big juicy steak? Hopefully not. Here's JD.
Well, there's a few things, Maria. First of all, Governor DeWine is exactly right. This train was not labeled as high hazardous. We're looking into why that was. That's likely a screw up on the Department of Transportation side, and we're trying to investigate that as we speak. The second thing, the thing that we're most focused on right now, Maria, is the quality of the air and water, especially the water. We're encouraging everybody to get their ground wells tested. There are a lot of private wells in this area, and we want to make sure that the water is safe to drink. The EPA, we've been really hammering them on what the acceptable safety levels are for the drinking water in East Palestine. We've yet to get the answers that we want, and so we're continuing to follow up on that. And then there's the third element of this, Maria, is why did this happen in the first place? Why wasn't the train labeled as high hazardous? That means that a lot of people didn't know what was on the train in the first place. Why have we gotten into a position where we're having hundreds of train derailments every year in this country when we just spent $1 trillion on infrastructure? This stuff should be becoming less likely, not happening as frequently as it is. So there's a lot of issues here, but right now my main focus is the health and safety of the groundwater in East Palestine.
Yeah.
All right, so interesting comments. We're going to see what the groundwater looks like, and we're going to see what all of these agencies have to say as soon as their results come out. Pete Buttigieg saying that there will be reports, and we'll take a look at it when it does come out. But that's the latest in Ohio, the Plume spreads. We're thinking about you, my friends in Ohio. Hopefully you're doing well. To everybody impacted by this, of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video, sharing it with a friend or family member, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.